Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we walk the ancient spine of the Appalachian Mountains, where mist clings to ridgelines like something that refuses to let go. For over 2,000 miles, this trail winds through forests older than memory, past shelters that have heard too many whispers, and over summits where hikers have vanished into thin air. These stories don't come from guidebooks or ranger stations with their polished explanations. They come from the people who were there when the mountains showed their true face. From journals found in abandoned packs, from testimonies given in hospital rooms, from confessions shared only after years of silence. Out here, where cell signals die and the nearest town might be days away, the wilderness doesn't just surround you. It watches. It waits. And sometimes, it follows you home. If you're drawn to the kind of truth that lingers in the dark, make sure to subscribe and stay with us tonight. The photograph showed someone sleeping in my tent. I was standing outside in the rain, thumbs scrolling through the images I'd just taken to check the lighting, when I saw it. Frame after frame of the shelter interior I'd shot for my trail journal, all empty wooden platforms and shadow, until the seventh photo. There, in the corner of my tent, visible through the mesh, was the clear outline of a person lying on their side, facing away from the camera. I could see the curve of their shoulder, the shape of their head, even the way the sleeping bag was pulled up around them. My tent was 15 feet away. I could see it from where I stood. There was no one inside it. There had never been anyone inside it. The rain was getting heavier, that spring storm kind that turns the trail into a creek. And I was alone at the Cove Mountain Shelter somewhere in Pennsylvania. I'd been alone since I'd arrived 3 hours earlier, which was exactly why I'd bothered to photograph the shelter. Because empty shelters were rare this time of year, mid-April, when the northbound through hikers were thick as black flies. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 34, and I'd been section hiking the AT for 3 years, doing it in pieces between my work as a civil engineer in Richmond. I've always been the kind of person who trusted what I could measure, what I could see with my own eyes and verify with my own hands. I didn't believe in ghosts or spirits or any of that backcountry folklore, but I believed in my camera, and my camera had just shown me something that couldn't exist. I stood there in the rain, water running down the back of my neck, staring at the image. I zoomed in. The figure was detailed enough that I could see the texture of what looked like an old-style sleeping bag, the kind they stopped making in the 80s. That quilted nylon in a particular shade of orange that you only saw in vintage gear shops now. The person's hair was dark, shoulder length, matted like they'd been on the trail for weeks without a real shower. I looked up at my tent again. Still empty. Still just my gear inside. My pack propped against the tent wall exactly where I'd left it. I deleted the photo. Then I checked the next image. The figure was gone. The tent was empty again in frame 8, just like it should have been in frame 7. The shelter behind me creaked in the wind, and I turned to look at it. Standard at-shelter design. 3 walls, open front, wooden sleeping platform that could fit maybe 8 people if they didn't mind being close. The roof was good, no leaks that I could see, and someone had carved the usual collection of trail names and dates into the wood. I'd read through them while I was eating my dinner. Nothing unusual. Lots of Wildflower 2019 and Stumbles No Bow 2021 and hearts and inside jokes that meant nothing to anyone but the people who'd written them. But there was one carving that sat lower than the others, down near the floor in the back corner. The wood around it was darker, older. It said, "Jenna still here, 1983. I'd noticed it earlier, but hadn't thought much about it. Now, standing in the rain with that impossible photograph fresh in my memory, I thought about it quite a bit. I didn't sleep in my tent that night. I told myself it was because of the rain, because the shelter was drier, and I'd be stupid not to use it. I set up my sleeping pad on the platform, got into my bag, and lay there listening to the storm move through the mountains. The rain was loud on the roof, a white noise that should have put me right to sleep after the 16 miles I'd hiked that day. But I stayed awake, watching the darkness where the shelter opened to the outside, listening for sounds that weren't rain. Around midnight, I heard the footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, moving along the gravel path that led to the shelter. I sat up, reaching for my headlamp, figuring it was another hiker arriving late. But the footsteps stopped just outside the shelter, right at the edge where the roof overhang ended and the rain began. I turned on my headlamp. There was no one there. The footsteps started again, moving across the front of the shelter from left to right, and I could hear them clearly. The crunch of gravel, the slight drag of someone who was tired, whose boots were heavy with miles. But my light showed nothing, just rain and darkness and the woods beyond. Then the footsteps came into the shelter. I tracked them by sound, watching the empty space as the sounds moved across the wooden platform, slow and careful, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping hiker. They moved to the back corner, to the spot where that old carving was, and then they stopped. I kept my light pointed at that corner for 5 solid minutes, not moving, barely breathing. Nothing appeared. But the temperature in that corner had dropped. I could see my breath now, just in that one spot, fogging in the beam of my headlamp while the rest of the shelter stayed relatively warm. "Jenna!" I said it before I could stop myself, feeling like an idiot the moment the word left my mouth. The cold spot spread. Within seconds, the entire shelter felt like a freezer, and I could hear something new. A soft sound, rhythmic, like someone breathing except not quite right. The exhales were too long, too steady, like air leaking from something that didn't have lungs. I got out of my sleeping bag and packed my gear in under 2 minutes. Some kind of record. I didn't bother with my rain cover. Didn't care about keeping things dry. I just needed to be moving. Needed to be away from that shelter and whatever was sharing it with me. I hiked through the storm for another hour, using my headlamp to follow the white blazes, slipping in mud and tripping over roots until I found another shelter. This one had 4 other hikers in it, all of them already asleep, and I've never been so happy to see strangers in my life. I squeezed into a spot on the platform and finally let myself close my eyes. In the morning, I asked the others if they knew anything about Cove Mountain Shelter, about anyone named Jenna. One of them, a through hiker who went by the trail named Compass, got quiet for a moment. "You saw the carving," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Jenna Talbot," he said, "disappeared from that shelter in May of 1983, 22 years old, solo hiking. Her gear was found inside the shelter, sleeping bags still laid out, food bags still hanging from the bear cables. But she was gone. They searched for weeks. Never found a trace." "What do people think happened?" I asked. Compass shrugged. "Officially? Animal attack, though there was no blood. Unofficially?" He looked uncomfortable. "People say she never left. Say she's still waiting there for something or someone. Lot of hikers report weird stuff at that shelter. Cold spots, footsteps. Some people say they've seen someone standing just outside the shelter at night, like they're trying to decide whether to come in." I thought about my photograph, about the figure in the orange sleeping bag. Has anyone ever tried to, I don't know, help her, if she's really there? How do you help someone who's been missing for over 40 years? Compass said. The trail just keeps going, people keep hiking, and Jenna keeps waiting. I finished my section hike 3 days later, took my car back to Richmond, and went back to my regular life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something unfinished on that mountain. I started researching Jenna Talbot, looking through old newspaper archives, missing person databases, hiking forums where people traded ghost stories and trail legends. The official investigation had concluded she'd likely died of exposure after wandering away from the shelter. possibly disoriented, possibly injured. But there were details that didn't fit. Her boots were still in the shelter. Her journal was still in her pack, with an entry dated the night she disappeared that read, "Something's not right about this place. The woods feel wrong. Going to hike out at first light." She never made it to first light. I found a forum post from 2015 where someone claimed they'd spent a night at Cove Mountain Shelter and woken up to find their gear rearranged, items taken out of their pack and carefully arranged in a circle on the platform like someone had been looking through their things while they slept. Another post from 2018 described waking up to the sound of someone crying, soft and desperate, coming from the corner where Jenna's carving was. The most recent post I found was from just 6 months before my visit. A hiker reported taking photos of the shelter and capturing a weird blur in one of them, approximately person-shaped, standing in the back corner. They'd included the photo. It was unclear, possibly just a trick of light and shadow, but the shape was there, and it was in the exact same corner. I've been back to the Appalachian Trail twice since that night, but I've never returned to Cove Mountain Shelter. The official story says Jenna Talbot died somewhere in those mountains, her body claimed by the wilderness. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw in that photograph, clear as day for just one frame before it vanished. I think Jenna is still at that shelter, still waiting for someone to explain why she never made it off the mountain. Still looking through the packs of passing hikers, maybe searching for something she lost. Maybe just trying to remember what it felt like to be on a journey instead of trapped in a single night that never ends. I sleep with my phone next to my pillow now, and sometimes I wake up at 3 in the morning and check my photos, scrolling through them with my heart pounding, terrified I'll see something that shouldn't be there. So far, my pictures have stayed empty of ghosts, but I never take photos of shelters anymore, and I never sleep in them alone. If you've ever found your gear rearranged in the night, if you've ever felt a cold spot in a shelter that should be warm, if you've ever heard footsteps that had no owner, don't convince yourself it was nothing. Someone might be trying to tell you they're still there, still waiting, and the least we can do is acknowledge we heard them. His footprints were facing the wrong way. I was 3 days into a 5-day section through the Great Smoky Mountains, somewhere between Klingman's Dome and Fontana Dam, when I found them. The trail had a light dusting of snow from the night before. Not enough to be dangerous, just enough to make the rocks slippery and show tracks clearly. These prints were fresh, maybe an hour old, moving north along the trail just like I was. Except they were backwards. The toes were pointing south, back the way I'd come, while the stride pattern showed someone walking forward, heel to toe, moving north. Like someone walking in reverse. Deliberately. For miles. My name is Sarah Beth Cunningham, 29 years old, and I'd worked as a wilderness EMT in the Smokies for 4 years before I started doing longer solo hikes in the off-season. I'd seen weird things before. Hypothermic hikers trying to undress in freezing weather, people hallucinating from dehydration, the occasional sleepwalker who'd wandered from their campsite. But I'd never seen anything like this. These tracks were steady, consistent, showing none of the stumbling or irregular gait you'd expect from someone confused or impaired. Whoever made them was walking backwards on purpose, and they were good at it. I followed the prints for about a quarter mile, watching them wind along the trail with the same confidence I'd have walking forward. At one point, they navigated around a fallen tree, the stride shortening appropriately for the obstacle, then lengthening again once past it. This wasn't someone playing a prank or testing their coordination. This was someone who'd been doing this for a while. Someone who'd gotten comfortable moving through the world in reverse. The prints led off the main trail onto a side path I didn't recognize, one that wasn't marked on my map. I stood there for a long moment, looking at that junction. Every piece of wilderness training I'd ever received said don't follow strange tracks onto unmarked trails, but my radio had picked up chatter the day before. A sketchy transmission about a missing hiker last seen near the Derrick Knob shelter. Description unclear. Last contact 4 days ago. If this was connected, if someone was out here hurt or lost or having some kind of breakdown, I couldn't just ignore it. I took the side trail. The backwards prints continued, leading me up a steep incline through old-growth forest where the trees were massive and the canopy blocked most of the light. The snow was thicker here, protected from the sun, and the prints stood out in sharp relief. I could see the tread pattern of the boots now. Salamans, probably, size 10 or 11, men's. The stride length suggested someone tall, over 6 feet. After about 20 minutes of climbing, I heard the humming. It was low, monotonous, no melody I recognized. Just a single note held for a long time, then a breath, then the same note again. It was coming from somewhere ahead, beyond a thick stand of rhododendron that crowded the trail. I slowed down, trying to move quietly, suddenly aware that I was tracking someone who might not want to be found, who might have a very good reason for walking backwards away from civilization. I came around the rhododendron and saw him. He was standing in a small clearing, facing away from me, completely motionless. Tall, just like I'd guessed, wearing a pack that looked too heavy for the way his shoulders sagged. His clothes were wrong for the season. Just jeans and a light jacket, no hat, no gloves, while the temperature was easily in the 30s. His hair was long, dark, hanging past his collar in tangles that suggested weeks without washing. The humming was coming from him, that same single note, unwavering. "Hey," I called out, keeping my voice calm and professional. "You okay? I'm an EMT. Do you need help?" He didn't turn around, didn't stop humming, didn't acknowledge my presence at all. I moved closer, circling slightly to try to see his face, keeping my distance. "Can you hear me? Are you hurt?" That's when I realized the footprints I'd been following didn't lead to where he was standing. They walked past that spot, continuing deeper into the woods, which meant either he'd walked backwards to this clearing and then moonwalked backwards away from it, or these weren't his prints at all. "My name's Sarah Beth," I tried again. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're safe." He finally stopped humming. The silence that followed was worse. In that silence, I could hear the forest holding its breath, every bird and small creature gone suddenly quiet. And then he spoke, his voice rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "Don't look at his face." "Whose face?" I asked. "Don't look at his face," he repeated. Same inflection, same cadence. "Don't look at his face. Don't look at his face." Over and over, like a recording stuck on loop. I took a step back, my hand moving to the radio on my belt. "I'm going to call for help, okay? We're going to get you somewhere warm." That's when he turned around. His eyes were open, but they weren't seeing me. They were seeing something past me, through me, somewhere else entirely. His face was gaunt, cheeks sunken, lips cracked and bleeding. He looked like he'd been out here for weeks, not days. But it was his expression that stopped me cold. Absolute terror, frozen on his face like a mask, his mouth slightly open as if he'd been screaming and someone had hit pause. "Don't look at his face," he said again, and this time he pointed behind me. I didn't turn around. Every instinct said, "Don't look," but I needed to know what was happening. I took my phone out slowly, switched it to camera mode, and held it up like I was taking a selfie, using the front-facing camera as a mirror. At first, I didn't see anything except forest and snow and the trail I'd come up. Then I saw the movement. Someone was standing about 30 feet behind me, partially hidden by a tree. They were perfectly still, watching us. But something about the shape was wrong. The proportions didn't look human. Too tall, too narrow, the head the wrong size for the body. And they were facing away, showing me their back, their head turned at an angle that necks don't turn, looking over their shoulder at me with a face I couldn't quite make out in the phone's small screen. "Don't look at his face," the man in front of me whispered. and I understood. This wasn't a warning about his face. It was a warning about the thing behind me. I kept my eyes on my phone screen, watching that figure in the reflection. It hadn't moved, but somehow it seemed closer than it had been a moment ago, like it was sliding forward without taking steps. The man with the sunken face started backing away, moving deeper into the woods, and I realized he was walking backwards because he'd learned the hard way what happens when you turn your back on whatever that thing was. My radio crackled. "Ningham, this is Base. Do you copy? Sarah Beth, respond." The figure behind me moved fast when the radio sound broke the silence. I saw it in the reflection, lurching toward me with a motion that was all wrong, and I ran. I didn't look back, didn't turn around, just ran forward along the side trail, following the backwards footprints in reverse, my pack slamming against my shoulders and my lungs burning in the cold air. I could hear something behind me, gaining ground. Not footsteps, more like something heavy being dragged through the snow, fast and getting faster. The humming started again, that same monotonous note. But now it was coming from behind me, and it was much, much louder than any human voice should be. The main trail appeared ahead, that official 8 junction with its white blaze on a tree, and I crashed onto it with the grace of a drunk bear. I finally looked back then, gasping for air, my hand on my knife even though I knew a knife wouldn't help. The side trail was empty. No figure, no sound. Just snow and trees and afternoon light filtering through the canopy like nothing had happened. But the backwoods footprints were still there, clear as day, leading off the main trail into those woods. And when I looked at my phone, at the photo I'd accidentally taken when I'd been using it as a mirror, I saw it clearly, the figure behind me, caught in perfect detail. It looked almost human, would have passed for human from a distance, except the face was on backwards. The eyes were where the back of the head should be, looking forward while the body faced away, and the expression was wrong. Too wide, too eager, like something that had learned to smile from watching humans but didn't understand what smiling meant. I radioed Base and reported what I'd seen, leaving out the parts they wouldn't believe. I told them there was a hiker in distress on an unmarked side trail off the AT, about 2 miles south of my position, and they needed to send someone immediately. They asked for better coordinates. I told them to look for backwards footprints in the snow, and the dispatcher went quiet for a moment before saying they'd send a team. The search team found the side trail. They found the clearing. They found boot prints and signs of someone camping rough, including a destroyed tent and scattered gear. But they didn't find the hiker. What they did find was a note, stuffed inside a torn sleeping bag, written in shaky handwriting that said, "It followed me from Derek Knob. Walks backwards so you can't see its face. Don't look at its face. Don't turn your back. I'm so tired, I can't walk backwards anymore." The missing hiker was eventually identified as Ethan Voss, 31, from Asheville. He'd signed the shelter register at Derek Knob 5 days before he disappeared, and his entry was strange enough that people remembered it. Something wrong with the woods tonight. The trees are facing the wrong way. No one knew what he meant by that. The official conclusion was that he'd experienced some kind of psychological break, possibly drug-induced, and died of exposure somewhere in the back country. His body was never recovered. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard, and I know that somewhere in the Smokies, there's something that walks backwards because it doesn't want you to see what's looking at you. Something that followed Ethan Voss for days until he couldn't run anymore, couldn't stay awake anymore, couldn't keep his face pointed in the right direction. I still hike the AT, but I pay attention to footprints now. I look at the direction they're facing, not just the trail they're following. And if I ever see prints that are moving forward while pointing backward, I turn around immediately and take a different route because I know what made them. I know it's still out there, waiting for someone to get curious, to follow the wrong tracks into the woods where it can teach them the game it taught Ethan. The game where the only rule is never look at its face, And the only way to survive is to walk backwards until your legs give out and you can't remember which way is forward anymore. If you're ever hiking alone and you hear humming with no melody behind you, don't turn around. Just leave the trail. Get to somewhere with people, with lights, with noise and civilization. And whatever you do, don't follow footprints that are facing the wrong direction, because they're not leading you to someone who needs help. They're leading you to something that's been waiting for you to make that exact mistake. The tent was still warm when I found it. I was doing a trail sweep at the Damascus area in Virginia, part of my job as a ridge runner for the AT Conservancy. It was late October. Most of the through hikers long since finished or quit for the season, and I was checking shelters and campsites for trash and damage before winter set in. This tent was about 50 yards off trail, set up in a little hollow that you wouldn't see unless you were looking for it. It was a nice spot, flat and protected from wind, with a fire ring that showed recent use. The tent fly was covered in frost, which was normal for a morning in late October at elevation. But when I touched it, I could feel warmth underneath, like someone had just gotten out of their sleeping bag minutes ago. I called out, did the usual, "Hey, anybody home?" routine. No answer. I waited a full 5 minutes, giving whoever it was time to come back from taking a morning bathroom break in the woods. Nobody came back. I'm Rachel Moretti, 42, and I'd been working as a ridge runner for 8 years. Before that, I'd been a teacher in Charlotte, but I'd burned out hard and needed to do something that didn't involve grading papers or dealing with parents who thought their kid was a genius when really they just needed to read a book occasionally. I knew the trail, knew the rhythms of hikers, knew the difference between someone who was just off taking their time and someone who'd left in a hurry. This felt like neither. This felt like someone had vanished mid-morning, leaving their tent set up and their gear inside, everything neat and organized, like they were planning to come right back. I unzipped the tent and looked inside. The sleeping bag was laid out, unzipped, still holding body heat when I touched it. There was a stuff sack being used as a pillow, a headlamp hanging from the interior loop, a water bottle half full, a paperback book open face down to mark the page. A pair of hiking boots sat just inside the vestibule, and next to them was a journal with a pen tucked into the spiral binding. What wasn't there? The hiker, their pack, any sign of where they'd gone. I picked up the journal, which I normally wouldn't do, people's private thoughts and all that. But this was starting to feel like a situation where privacy was less important than safety. The most recent entry was dated that morning, written in neat handwriting that suggested someone young, probably female based on the looping letters. It read, Day 187. Virginia is beautiful this time of year. Everyone said I was crazy to hike this late, but I like having the trail to myself. Saw a deer this morning, just standing in the fog like a ghost. It looked at me for a long time before it walked away. I tried to follow it. I think that was a mistake. That was it. The entry just stopped, mid-thought, like she'd been interrupted. I radioed it in, gave my coordinates, described what I'd found. The dispatcher asked the obvious questions, any signs of struggle, any blood, any indication of where the hiker had gone. I told her no to all of it. The scene was peaceful, calm, just empty in a way that felt deliberately wrong. "We'll send someone," she said. "Don't touch anything else. And Rachel, don't go looking for them. Wait for the team." I waited. While I waited, I read the rest of the journal. Her name was Olivia Chen, 23 years old, from Seattle. She'd started her through hike in March at Springer Mountain in Georgia, one of those gap year kids taking time off before graduate school to find herself on the trail. Her entries were thoughtful, detailed, full of observations about nature and other hikers, and the small moments that make long-distance hiking meaningful. She wrote about the friendships she'd made, the shelters she'd stayed in, the towns where she'd resupplied. Normal through-hiker stuff. But starting around Pennsylvania, the entries started to change. small things at first. She mentioned feeling watched while hiking alone. She wrote about hearing footsteps behind her that would stop whenever she stopped, start whenever she started walking again. She described other hikers who seemed off somehow, people she'd pass on the trail who wouldn't respond to her greetings, who would just stare at her as she went by. In New Jersey, she wrote, "Saw the same man 3 times today, miles apart. Same clothes, same pack, same expression, but it can't be the same person. Nobody moves that fast on this terrain." In New York, "The shelters feel wrong now. I can't explain it. I'll be lying in my sleeping bag and I'll hear someone walk in, hear them set down their pack, hear them settle onto the platform, but when I look, there's nobody there. I'm starting to prefer camping alone." In Connecticut, "I think something's following me. Not a person, not an animal, something that moves like it's learning how to walk, like it's copying the way humans move but doesn't quite have it right. I see it sometimes in my peripheral vision, keeping pace with me through the trees. When I try to look directly at it, it's gone." By Vermont, her entries were shorter, more frantic. "It's getting closer. I can hear it breathing at night. I can't quit. If I quit, what was the point? Just 2 more months. I can make it 2 more months." By New Hampshire, "It touched my tent last night. I felt it through the fabric, felt fingers pressing against the wall, moving up and down like it was trying to figure out how the tent worked. I didn't move. I barely breathed. After a while, it went away. But I know it's still out there. I know it's waiting." The final entries, written in Virginia over the past week, were the hardest to read. I think I know what it wants now. It wants to finish the hike. It's been following me since Georgia, watching me, learning from me, learning how to be human. I've been teaching it without meaning to. Every time I set up camp, every time I filter water, every time I check my map, it's been watching. And now it's almost ready. Now it's almost learned enough to take my place. I saw it clearly yesterday. It looks like me now, same height, same build, wearing the same clothes I was wearing a week ago, but the face is wrong. It's my face, but it's wrong. Like someone built a copy from memory and got the details slightly off. The eyes are too far apart. The mouth doesn't move right when it breathes. I can't go into towns anymore. I can't be around other people. What if it follows me? What if it tries to interact with someone and they realize it's not human? What if they think it's me? I only have 200 miles left. Just 200 miles to Katahdin. If I can finish, maybe it will leave me alone. Maybe it will be satisfied. Maybe it will find someone else. I'm so tired. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time in weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it outside, circling my tent, getting closer, learning, practicing. This morning I saw the deer. It was beautiful, standing in the fog. I wanted to take a picture, but my phone was in my pack. The deer walked into the woods and I followed it without thinking. It led me in a circle. When I got back to my tent, I saw boot prints in the frost that weren't there when I left. They were my boot prints. Same tread, same size, same wear pattern. But I was the one making them, which means someone else had been walking around my campsite wearing boots identical to mine. I think it's ready now. I think it's learned everything it needs. I think tonight might be the last. The entry ended there, the pen trailing off the page. The search team arrived an hour later. 3 rangers, a K9 unit, and a guy from the local sheriff's office who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They went through the tent, bagged the journal as evidence, took photos of everything. The dog tried to find a scent trail but kept circling back to the tent, whining and refusing to go more than 20 feet in any direction. "It's like she just evaporated," the K9 handler said, frustrated. "Max isn't picking up anything. No trail out, no trail in, nothing." One of the rangers found something interesting, though. There were footprints in the frost around the tent. Boot prints, probably from Olivia's morning routine. But there were 2 sets. Same boots. Same size, same pattern. One set led away from the tent into the woods, heading roughly northeast. The other set came from the woods to the tent, then stopped at the entrance, like someone had stood there looking inside. She probably circled back to check something she forgot, the sheriff's deputy said, but he didn't sound convinced. We followed the prints that led away from the tent. They went about 100 yards through the woods, moving in a straight line like whoever made them knew exactly where they were going. Then they just stopped. Not at a rock where someone could have jumped to hide their trail, not at a stream where the prints would wash away. They just stopped in the middle of a clearing, mid-stride, like whoever was making them had been erased from existence. The other set of prints, the ones that approached the tent, didn't have an origin point. They started about 30 yards away, appearing in the middle of an open area with no trail leading to them. They just began, as if someone had dropped from the sky and started walking. The official search lasted 4 days. They brought in more dogs, a helicopter with thermal imaging, volunteer groups from nearby towns. They combed hundreds of acres, checked every shelter and campsite for miles in both directions. They found nothing. No body, no additional evidence, no sign of Olivia Chen. 3 weeks later, a northbound through hiker posted on a trail forum about a weird encounter she'd had near Damascus. She'd been hiking alone when another hiker came up behind her, moving fast. She'd stepped aside to let them pass. Said hello, like you do. The hiker, a young Asian woman wearing a pack with Seattle stickers, had stopped and looked at her. Just looked, not saying anything for a long, uncomfortable moment. Her face was wrong, the forum post said. I can't explain it. Like someone had described a face to an artist who'd never seen a human before, and she moved weird, kind of jerky, like she was remembering how to walk with each step. I asked if she was okay, and she said, finishing the hike in this flat voice, and then just kept walking. Fast. Faster than anyone should be able to move with a full pack. I watched her disappear up the trail, and I swear to God she didn't look like she was getting tired. She looked like she could walk forever. 2 other hikers reported similar encounters over the next month, both describing a young woman matching Olivia's description who moved too fast and didn't quite look right. The last sighting was at Katahdin in Maine, Summit Day, early December, when the mountain was technically closed for the season. A park ranger saw someone climbing up the hunt trail alone, no proper winter gear, moving like the cold didn't affect them. He hiked up to stop them, to turn them around before they got themselves killed, but by the time he reached the summit, they were gone. Just gone, with no tracks leading down any of the trails. He found something on the summit marker, though, a journal, weathered and worn, with Seattle stickers on the cover. It was open to the last page, where someone had written in careful, slightly wrong handwriting, Day 221, I finished. I am a through hiker now. I learned everything. I am ready to do it again. Olivia Chen is still listed as a missing person. Her parents came to Virginia, searched the area themselves, hired private investigators. They found nothing. The official theory is that she had some kind of mental health crisis and either died of exposure or intentionally disappeared. But her family doesn't believe that. They know their daughter. They know she wouldn't just quit. I still work the trail, still do my sweeps, still check campsites and shelters. But I pay attention now to the hikers I meet. I look at their faces carefully, watch how they move, listen to how they talk. Because sometimes I see someone who looks almost right, but not quite. Someone who moves like they're still learning how human bodies work. Someone who says words like they're reading from a script. And I wonder if it's still out there, if it's still hiking, still learning, still perfecting its impression of what it thinks a through hiker should be. I wonder how many times it's finished the trail now. How many people have passed it on the mountain and thought they were just meeting another enthusiastic hiker when really they were teaching it more about how to be human. If you're section hiking or through hiking the AT, pay attention to the people you meet. If someone seems off, if they move wrong or talk wrong or look at you like they're memorizing your face, trust that feeling. And if you ever find a warm tent with nobody in it, don't go looking for whoever left it behind. Because they might not be missing. They might have been replaced, and the thing that replaced them might still be learning what to do with a human body, might still be figuring out how to be the person it's pretending to be. He was in the exact same position. I'd passed him 6 hours earlier, coming south while I was heading north, somewhere on the ridge between Weyerbold and Silerbold in North Carolina. He'd been sitting on a rock just off the trail, pack still on, staring out at the valley below. I'd said hello, asked if he was okay. He'd nodded without looking at me. So I'd kept walking, figuring he was just taking a break to enjoy the view. But now, 6 hours later, hiking back the same way after realizing I'd missed a shelter I'd wanted to photograph, there he was. Same rock, same position, same 1,000-yard stare at the valley. He hadn't moved. His pack was on the same shoulder, his hands were in the same position on his knees, his head was tilted at the exact same angle. I stopped about 20 feet away, suddenly not wanting to get any closer. "Hey," I called. "You've been here a while. Everything okay?" He didn't respond, didn't blink, just kept staring at that valley like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. "My name is Derek Paulson, 37, and I worked as a freelance photographer covering outdoor recreation and trail culture. I'd been documenting the AT for a project about long-distance hiking, spending weeks at a time on different sections, capturing the landscape and the people who moved through it. I'd met hundreds of hikers by that point, seen every kind of personality and hiking style, but I'd never seen anyone sit perfectly still for 6 hours straight. I walked closer, studying him. He was maybe 60 years old, gray beard, weathered face, the kind of lean build that suggested he'd been hiking for decades. His clothes were quality gear but old, well used. His pack was a model they'd stopped making at least 10 years ago. Nothing about him screamed emergency or distress. He just looked like a hiker taking a break, except for the complete and total stillness. "Sir." I moved into his line of sight, waving my hand. "Can you hear me?" His eyes didn't track my movement. They stayed fixed on the valley, unblinking. I could see his chest moving. He was breathing, slow and steady, but that was the only movement. Even his hair didn't move in the wind that was blowing across the ridge. I pulled out my radio, but before I could call it in, I noticed something on the rock next to him. A piece of paper held down by a small stone. I picked it up. It was a note, written in cramped handwriting. "His name is Douglas Kern. He's been here since 1997. Don't try to move him. Don't try to help him. Just leave him be." I looked at the hiker, at Douglas, with new eyes. 1997 was 26 years ago. This couldn't be the same person. The body would have decomposed, animals would have scattered it, weather would have destroyed it. But the note was recent, the paper still white and crisp, and Douglas looked alive, was breathing, was warm when I'd worked up the courage to touch his shoulder earlier. I radioed base anyway, told them I had a possible medical emergency, a non-responsive hiker who might be having a stroke or seizure. They said they'd send someone, but it would be at least 2 hours given the location. I told them I'd stay with him. While I waited, I did what any photographer would do. I documented. I took photos of Douglas, the rock, the note, the position of his body. I took photos of the valley he was staring at, trying to see what he was seeing. It was a beautiful view. Rolling mountains, layers of ridges fading to blue in the distance, the sun starting to sink toward the horizon. But it wasn't so beautiful that you'd want to stare at it for 6 hours. Or 26 years. As I was photographing, I noticed something strange in the viewfinder. There was a shimmer in the air between Douglas and the valley, like heat distortion, except the temperature was in the 50s. I lowered the camera and looked with my naked eyes. No shimmer. Raised the camera again, looked through the viewfinder. Shimmer was back, stronger now, rippling like water. I moved to a different angle, trying to figure out what was causing it. The shimmer seemed to be coming from Douglas himself, radiating out from his body toward the valley. And in the center of the shimmer, barely visible, there was something that looked like a thread or a cord, stretching from Douglas's chest out to somewhere far away, too far to see clearly. I zoomed in with my telephoto lens, following that thread. It extended out over the valley, dipping and rising with the landscape, maintaining a perfectly straight line regardless of the terrain. It went for miles, disappearing into the distance, and at the very edge of my lens's capability, I could see where it ended. A dark spot on a far ridge, something that might have been a person or a rock or a shadow. When I lowered the camera, the thread was invisible again. Douglas continued staring, unchanged. The rescue team arrived after dark. 3 rangers and a paramedic, all of them huffing from the climb. The paramedic checked Douglas's vitals, tested his responses, shone lights in his eyes. "He's hypothermic," she said, "but not severely, and heart rate is slow but steady. He's breathing on his own, but he's not responding to any stimuli. It's like he's locked in." "Can we move him?" one of the rangers asked. The paramedic hesitated. "We should. He needs a hospital. But I don't know how we'd carry him out safely in the dark. We might need to wait for morning, keep him warm overnight." I showed them the note. They read it, exchanged glances, clearly not sure what to make of it. "This is someone's idea of a joke," the lead ranger said. "Nobody's been sitting on this rock since 1997. But then one of the other rangers, an older guy named Bill who'd been working these mountains for 30 years, went very quiet. "I remember Douglas Kern," he said. "He went missing in 97. I was part of the search team. We found his pack about half a mile from here, like he'd just set it down and wandered off. Never found him. The case is still open." We all looked at Douglas, sitting there breathing on his rock. "That's impossible," the paramedic said. "He would have died in days, not survived for 26 years. Bill walked closer to Douglas, studying his face. "I saw photos during the search. Family provided them. This looks like him. Older, but it could be him. So what? He's been sitting on this rock for 26 years. The lead ranger didn't even try to hide his skepticism. "Eating what? Drinking what?" Nobody had an answer for that. We decided to try moving him. The paramedic and 2 rangers carefully lifted Douglas from the rock, supporting his weight, trying to get him onto a stretcher. The moment they moved him, the exact moment his body left contact with the rock, he screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was too high, too sustained, like metal scraping on metal. His eyes stayed fixed on the valley, didn't close, didn't blink, but the scream poured out of his mouth like something was being torn from his body. The rangers dropped him in shock, and the moment he touched the rock again, the screaming stopped. Silence. Just Douglas, sitting there breathing, staring at the valley like nothing had happened. "Okay," the lead ranger said, his voice shaky. "New plan. We're not moving him tonight." We set up camp nearby, taking shifts to watch Douglas and keep a fire going. I couldn't sleep, so I spent the night taking more photos, trying to understand what I was seeing. Every photo showed that shimmer, that thread, stretching from Douglas to the far ridge. And as the night went on, I started to see more threads. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all radiating from that dark spot on the distant ridge, reaching out to different points in the mountains. One of those threads led to a spot about a mile south of our position. In the morning, after the rangers had left to get more help and figure out what to do about Douglas, I hiked to where that thread ended. I found another hiker, a woman, maybe 40, sitting on a log, staring west toward the same valley. She'd been there long enough that moss had started growing on her boots. Next to her was another note. "Her name is Patricia Wells. She's been here since 2003. Don't try to move her. Don't try to help her. Just leave her be. I found 3 more over the next week, following the threads I could see through my camera. All of them sitting, all of them staring at valleys or distant mountains, all of them locked in perfect stillness. Each one had a note with a name and a year. The earliest was from 1979. The most recent was from 2019. All of them were still breathing. All of them screamed when someone tried to move them. The rangers and park service tried everything. They brought in doctors, neurologists, even a priest. Nobody could explain what was happening or how to stop it. They couldn't forcibly evacuate the hikers because moving them seemed to cause extreme trauma. They couldn't leave them because they were technically still alive and needed some kind of care. Eventually, they compromised. Regular check-ins, weatherproof shelters built around their positions, quiet observation to make sure they didn't deteriorate. The official explanation is that it's some kind of mass dissociative fugue state, possibly caused by environmental factors or shared psychological trauma. But that doesn't explain how they've survived for years, decades without food or water. It doesn't explain the threads I can see in my photos, all leading back to that dark spot on the distant ridge. I hiked out to that ridge last summer. It took 3 days of off-trail bushwhacking, but I found it. A cave, small and partially hidden by fallen trees. Inside, the walls were covered in carvings, thousands of them, names and dates going back over a century. And in the center of the cave was a formation that looked almost like a chair, made from rock that didn't match the rest of the cave, stone that was smooth and dark and warm to the touch despite the cold air. There was a note there too, much older than the others, carved directly into the rock. The mountain keeps what it's owed. Feed it your stillness, or it will take your motion. Sit and stare, or run and fall. Choose. I think the people sitting on those rocks and logs made their choice. I think something in these mountains, something old, something patient, caught them at a moment of weakness or doubt or fear. And instead of falling, instead of running, they sat. They gave it their motion, their agency, their futures, and in return, it kept them alive, kept them breathing, suspended in a moment that never ends. Douglas Kern is still on his rock. Patricia Wells is still on her log. The others are still at their posts, staring at valleys and horizons, seeing something we can't see, connected to something we don't understand. The Park Service monitors them quietly, doesn't publicize their locations, doesn't want copycats or gawkers. But they're there, if you know where to look. I still photograph the trail, but I'm careful now about where I rest. I don't sit on rocks that face valleys. I don't stare too long at distant ridges. Because I can feel it sometimes when I'm out there alone, feel something paying attention, feel something waiting for me to pause for just a little too long. Feel threads in the air that haven't connected to anyone yet, drifting like spider silk, looking for someone to hold still long enough to catch. If you're hiking the southern Appalachians and you see someone sitting perfectly still, staring at nothing, don't try to help them. They're beyond help. They made their choice, and the mountain accepted it. Just note the location, report it quietly to the rangers if you feel you must, and keep moving. Don't stop. Don't rest in that spot. Don't try to understand what they're seeing. Because if you look too long, if you try to see what they see, you might feel those threads reaching for you, might feel them brush against your skin like the lightest touch. And you might be tempted to just sit for a moment, just stare for a minute, just rest your legs and enjoy the view. And then you'll never move again. The handwriting changed mid-sentence. I was sitting in the Blood Mountain shelter in Georgia, reading through the register like I always did, enjoying the trail gossip and jokes hikers left for each other. Most entries were standard stuff. Great weather today. Saw 3 bears, heading to Neal's Gap tomorrow. But one entry from 3 days earlier started normal and then shifted into something else. It began, Day 12, feeling strong, making good time. Can't wait to reach. And then the handwriting changed, became sharp and jagged. The letters pressed so hard into the paper they'd torn through in places. Don't trust the voices, they sound like you, but they're not you. They're learning. The entry wasn't signed. The one before it was from a hiker named Switchback, talking about twisted ankles and ibuprofen. The one after it was from someone called Strider, commenting on the beautiful sunrise. But that middle entry, the one with the changing handwriting, just hung there between them like a warning. My name is Kimberly Oakes, 26, and I'd been through hiking since March. Part of the northbound bubble of hikers doing the whole trail in one season. I was a teacher on sabbatical from a school in Atlanta, using the hike as a way to reset after a bad breakup and a worse year of trying to get teenagers to care about literature. I believed in rationality, in evidence, in things that made sense. But that register entry made me feel something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Pure instinctive fear that came from someplace deeper than logic. I looked around the shelter. I was alone, which was rare for Blood Mountain. It was a popular spot, usually crowded with weekend hikers and newbie-through hikers still in the Georgia section. But it was a Tuesday in late April, and apparently I'd hit a gap in the hiking traffic. The shelter was empty, except for me and that register, and the sound of wind moving through the trees outside. I almost didn't keep reading, but I did, flipping back through the pages, looking for other entries from the same person. I found them scattered throughout the past month, and they told a story. First entry, dated March 28th. Starting my through hike today. So excited. Trail name is Whisper because I'm a librarian and love books. Here's to 2,190 miles. April 2nd. The trail is harder than I thought, but so beautiful. Met some great people, feeling like I'm part of something special. April 8th. Weird thing happened today. Was hiking alone and heard someone call my name. Turned around, nobody there. Happened twice more, probably just wind. April 12th. The voices are getting clearer. They sound exactly like me, like I'm calling to myself from the woods. I know it's probably some kind of echo or acoustic trick, but it's unsettling. April 15th. It's not an echo. I heard it clearly today. Heard my own voice coming from off-trail, saying things I was thinking but hadn't said out loud. Saying, I'm tired and I want to stop and I should quit. But I hadn't said those things. I was thinking them, but I didn't say them. April 18th. I saw her today. Saw myself. Was setting up my tent and looked up, and there was someone standing in the trees about 30 yards away. She was wearing my clothes, my pack, my face. She was just standing there, watching me. I called out and she disappeared. I'm not sleeping tonight. April 20th. She's following me. I see her all the time now. She keeps pace with me through the trees, always at a distance, always watching. Sometimes she's ahead of me on the trail, and when I catch up, she's gone. Other hikers don't see her. I asked a couple guys if they'd passed anyone matching my description, and they looked at me like I was crazy. April 22nd. I think I understand now. She's learning how to be me. I watched her yesterday from behind a tree, watched her set up camp in a clearing I'd just left. She copied everything exactly. The way I shake out my sleeping bag, the way I organize my pack, the way I filter water. She's studying me, and she's getting better at it. April 25th, the entry from 3 days ago. Day 12, feeling strong, making good time. Can't wait to reach. Don't trust the voices, they sound like you, but they're not you, they're learning. There were no more entries from Whisper after that. I sat there in the shelter as the light faded outside, trying to rationalize what I'd read. Psychological break, trail stress, dehydration leading to hallucinations. All possible, all more likely than the alternative. which was that there was something on this trail that could copy hikers, could steal their voices and faces and behaviors. But then I heard it. My own voice, coming from the woods outside the shelter, calling out, "Hello, Kim, are you in there?" I froze. I hadn't spoken. My mouth was closed, but I could hear myself clearly, hear my voice with all its familiar inflections and patterns, coming from the darkness beyond the shelter's open front. "Kim, I need help. I think I'm lost." I grabbed my headlamp and shone it toward the voice. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating trees and underbrush. No person, no hiker, nothing. "Kim, please, I can't find the trail." The voice was moving, circling the shelter, always staying just outside the range of my light. And it wasn't just using my voice anymore. It was using my words, my speech patterns, the exact way I'd talk if I was scared and lost. "I'm not falling for this," I said out loud, my voice shaking. "I know you're not me." Silence for a moment. Then, "But I am you. I've been watching you for weeks. I know how you walk, how you think, how you sound when you're afraid. I'm you now. I'm the version that doesn't quit, that doesn't doubt, that finishes what she starts. And you're the version that sits in shelters reading registers, looking for reasons to be scared." I turned off my headlamp and sat in the darkness, controlling my breathing, trying to think. The voice continued, sometimes close, sometimes distant, always sounding exactly like me. It told me about my childhood, about my ex-boyfriend, about the students I'd taught, about private thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. It knew everything because it had been listening, watching, learning. "Let me show you something, Kim." The voice was right outside now, maybe 10 feet away. "Let me show you what I can do." I heard footsteps coming into the shelter, slow and deliberate. I pressed myself against the back wall, fumbling for the knife in my pack. The footsteps stopped about halfway across the shelter floor. "Turn on your light," the voice said. My voice. "Look at me. Look at how perfect I've become." I didn't turn on the light. I sat there in darkness, gripping my knife, while the thing that sounded like me started laughing. It was my laugh, exactly my laugh, except it went on too long, sustained past the point where human lungs would need to breathe. Then it stopped. The footsteps retreated. Silence returned, broken only by the wind and the small sounds of the forest. I didn't sleep that night. I sat awake with my knife in my hand and my back against the wall, listening for any sound that might warn me it had come back. As dawn broke, I packed my gear as fast as I could and got back on the trail, hiking north, putting distance between myself and Blood Mountain. But I could feel it following me. Not close, not obvious, but there. Keeping pace through the trees, watching how I moved, listening to how I sounded, perfecting its impression. I started varying my routine. I'd set up camp and then move to a different spot an hour later. I'd talk out loud, saying things that weren't true, trying to feed it false information. I avoided other hikers because I was terrified it would approach them pretending to be me, and they wouldn't know the difference. In Tennessee, I met another solo hiker, a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Falcon. We hiked together for a few days, and I was grateful for the company. She was experienced, confident, exactly the kind of hiking partner I needed. On the third day, we stopped for lunch at a stream crossing. Falcon went to filter water while I stayed with the packs. When she came back, something was wrong. She moved slightly differently, held herself at a different angle. Her smile was too perfect, too practiced. "Ready to keep going?" she asked, and her voice was right, but her inflection was off, like someone reading lines they'd memorized. "Where's Falcon?" I asked quietly. The thing wearing Falcon's face tilted its head, studying me. "I am Falcon." "No, you're not." I stood up, backing away from my pack. "Where is she?" It smiled wider. "She's resting," She was tired. I'm going to finish the hike for her. I've been learning from her for weeks, and now I'm ready. You won't be able to tell the difference. Everyone will tell the difference. Will they? Will they really? It moved closer, and I could see now that the details were almost perfect. Almost. The eyes were slightly wrong. The pupils too dilated. The movements were too smooth, too fluid. I've learned so much. From Falcon. From you. From Whisper. From dozens of others over the years. I'm getting better. Soon I'll be perfect. I ran. I left my pack, left my gear, just ran north along the trail as fast as I could. Behind me, I heard Falcon's voice calling out, "Kim, wait! Don't leave me!" But I knew Falcon was gone. I knew she was somewhere back there, maybe still alive, maybe already replaced, and there was nothing I could do. I made it to Damascus, Virginia, and I quit. I didn't finish the trail. I got a ride to the nearest bus station and went home to Atlanta and tried to pretend the whole thing had been some kind of stress-induced breakdown, but I still hear my voice sometimes. When I'm alone, I hear it calling from other rooms, asking questions I haven't asked, saying things I haven't said. I see people who move just slightly wrong, who smile too perfectly, who seem like they're still learning how to be human. 6 months after I quit, I got a Facebook friend request from someone named Kimberly Oakes. The profile picture was me, but it was a photo I'd never taken, wearing clothes I'd never owned. The profile said she'd recently completed a through hike of the Appalachian Trail, was back to teaching, loved her job and her life. She had friends I didn't recognize, posted about experiences I'd never had. I didn't accept the request. I deleted my social media accounts, changed my phone number, moved to a different city. But I know she's out there, living my life better than I ever did, being me more successfully than I ever managed. And I know she's not the only one. I know there are others on that trail, learning from hikers, perfecting their impressions, waiting until they're ready to step into someone's life and take over. The Park Service won't investigate it. The missing persons reports are too scattered, too vague. People quit the trail all the time. People have breakdowns. People decide the hike isn't for them and go home. Except some of them don't go home. Some of them never leave the trail, and something else, something that looks just like them, goes home in their place. If you're planning to hike the AT, especially if you're going solo, pay attention to your voice. If you hear yourself calling from the woods, don't respond. Don't engage with it. Don't let it learn how you sound when you're afraid, because it will use that fear against you. And if you meet another hiker who seems just slightly wrong, who moves too smoothly or smiles too perfectly, don't hike with them. Don't trust them, because they might be learning from you, might be studying you, might be waiting for the right moment to become you. And once they do, once they've perfected their impression, the real you becomes unnecessary. The real you becomes just another person who quit the trail for reasons nobody quite understands. I should have finished the hike. I should have made it to Katahdin, but I chose to live as myself, imperfect and scared and human, rather than risk being replaced by something that would do it better. That's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending I chose. And every day, I'm grateful I still got to choose. The gas station was the same as yesterday. Same faded chevron sign with 2 letters burned out. Same pickup truck parked by the air pump with the same rust pattern on the door. Same man in a blue jacket walking in through the front door at exactly 2:47 p.m. I know it was exactly 2:47 because I'd checked my watch when I'd seen him yesterday, noting the time out of habit, the way you do when you're documenting the trail. And now, 24 hours later, he was walking in again at precisely the same moment, wearing the same clothes, moving with the same gait. I was standing at the trail crossing, where the AT briefly touched civilization near Hot Springs, North Carolina. I'd come into town to resupply, planned to stay one night at the hostel, and then keep hiking north. But something had gone wrong. something I couldn't quite define. Like déjà vu, except more concrete, more insistent. My name is Anthony Brewer, 51 years old, and I'd been section hiking the AT for the better part of a decade, doing it in pieces during my vacation time from my job as an accountant in Raleigh. I was methodical by nature, kept detailed logs, photographed everything. Numbers and patterns were my language, and I noticed when patterns repeated in ways they shouldn't. Hot Springs was repeating. I'd first noticed it at breakfast. The hostel served family-style meals, and I'd sat across from the same couple both mornings. Frank and Denise, retirees from Ohio doing a short section hike. Yesterday, Frank had told a story about getting lost near Lover's Leap Ridge in 1987, a long, rambling tale with specific details. This morning, he told the exact same story, word for word, same pauses, same punchline. When I'd asked him about it, he'd looked confused, insisted he'd never told me that story before. At the grocery store, I'd watched a teenager stock the same shelf with the same box of cereal I'd seen her stocking yesterday. Same box, same spot, same frustrated sigh when she realized she'd grabbed the wrong one. I'd tried to talk to her, to ask if she worked here yesterday. She'd looked at me like I was crazy, said it was her first day, and now this gas station, this man in the blue jacket, walking in at 2:47 p.m. exactly like clockwork. I followed him inside. The bell above the door chimed the same two-note sound. The cashier looked up with the same expression of mild interest. The man in the blue jacket went to the cooler in back, grabbed the same energy drink, brought it to the counter. "That'll be $3.52, the cashier said, and I knew she was going to say that because she'd said it yesterday in exactly the same tone. "You were here yesterday," I said to the man in the blue jacket. "You bought that same drink at this same time." He looked at me, confused. "I drove in today from Asheville. Haven't been here in months." "Check your receipt," I pressed. "Check your bank statement. You bought this exact drink yesterday at 2:47. He pulled out his phone, clearly humoring me, checked his banking app. His confusion deepened. There is a charge from here yesterday. Same amount, but I wasn't..." He trailed off, looking at the drink in his hand like it had betrayed him. The cashier was watching us with an expression I couldn't read. When the man left, still looking confused, I approached the counter. "How long have you worked here?" I asked. 6 years, she said automatically. Then paused, frowned. "Wait. No, that doesn't sound right. I think 6 years. What's today's date?" "April 23rd. What was yesterday's date?" "April 22nd. She said it with confidence, but her eyes said something different. Her eyes said she wasn't sure, wasn't certain, couldn't quite remember yesterday as a distinct entity separate from today. "Has anyone else mentioned this?" I asked. "Anyone else notice things repeating?" She looked uncomfortable. "There was a hiker a couple weeks ago. He stayed in town for 3 days, kept insisting he was stuck in a loop, that the town was broken. He got real worked up about it. Sheriff asked him to leave." "Where did he go?" "Back to the trail, I assume. North or south. Don't know which." I bought a notebook and started documenting everything. Every detail, every interaction, every small event I witnessed. Then I stayed another day, watching to see what would repeat. Almost everything repeated. The man in the blue jacket came at 2:47, bought his energy drink. Frank told his Lover's Leap Ridge story at breakfast. The teenager stocked cereal at the grocery store. A woman walked a golden retriever past the hostel at 8:15 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. A delivery truck arrived at the hardware store at 11:03. Every single event happened at the exact same time it had the previous day. But small things changed. The weather was slightly different. Yesterday had been partly cloudy. Today was overcast. The number of hikers at the hostel was different. Yesterday there had been 6. Today there were 4. And when I checked the dates on newspapers and my phone, they advanced normally. April 23rd became April 24th. The calendar wasn't stuck. Just the town, just the people. I tried to leave on the morning of my third day. I packed my gear, said goodbye to the hostel owner, and started hiking north on the trail. I hiked for 3 hours, made good time, stopped to check my map. I was at the trail crossing by the gas station, the same crossing I'd started from. I'd hiked north for 3 hours and ended up exactly where I'd begun. I tried again, this time heading south. 2 hours of steady hiking. Ended up at the gas station again, east, off-trail, bushwhacking through the woods. I hiked until I was exhausted, until my GPS showed I was miles from hot springs. But when I came out of the woods, I was standing at the edge of town, looking at the same buildings I'd been trying to escape. Hot springs had caught me. The loop had expanded to include me. I went back to the hostel and found Frank and Denise eating dinner. "Do you remember me?" I asked. Frank looked up, smiled. "Sure, you're Anthony, the accountant from Raleigh. You're section hiking, right? What day is it?" "April 24th. "Why? What did you do today?" Frank thought for a moment. "Hiked a short section north of town. Had a nice lunch at that cafe on the main street. Came back here for dinner, same as yesterday, same as we do every day." He said it without irony, without realizing what he just admitted. "How long have you been here?" I asked quietly. Denise frowned. "We arrived." "When did we arrive, Frank?" Frank's smile faltered. It was... He couldn't finish the sentence. He couldn't remember. I spent the next week trying different approaches. I tried to convince other people they were stuck. Most didn't believe me, thought I was having some kind of breakdown. A few admitted things felt strange, that time seemed slippery, that they couldn't quite remember arriving or planning to leave. But even when they acknowledged it, they couldn't act on it. They'd agree to try leaving with me, but when morning came, they'd forgotten the conversation, would be back to their loops. Only the hikers seemed partially immune. If they stayed less than 3 days, they could leave, but anyone who stayed longer started to loop. I watched it happen to a young couple who decided to take a few 0 days. By the 4th day, they were repeating the same conversations, eating the same meals, hiking the same short section of trail and coming back to town. I found the hiker who'd been kicked out for talking about the loop. His name was carved in the shelter register just north of town. "Deacon, this place is wrong. Don't stay long." April 7th. I tried to find more information about him, asked people in town. Nobody remembered him. He'd been erased from the loop, not part of the pattern, discarded by whatever force was keeping hot springs locked in repetition. On my 14th day, though I was no longer sure if it was 14 distinct days or the same day repeated 14 times, I met someone new. She was standing at the trail crossing, staring at the gas station with an expression I recognized. Confusion mixed with dawning horror. "It's the same," she said when I approached. "I was here yesterday. I left. I hiked for 2 days, and now I'm back, and that man is walking into the gas station at 2:47 again." Her name was Rebecca Tran, 33, through hiking from Georgia to Maine. She'd stayed one night in Hot Springs 6 days ago, left, continued north. But the trail had led her back, just like it had led me back. "How many times have you tried to leave?" she asked. "Lost count. Dozens." "What if we tried together? What if everyone tried at once?" We spent days trying to organize it, trying to convince the people of Hot Springs to leave simultaneously. But most couldn't understand what we were asking. Their loops were too ingrained, their sense of time too degraded. The best we managed was 6 people. Me, Rebecca, 2 other hikers who'd noticed the strangeness, and 2 locals who'd maintained enough awareness to realize something was wrong. We left at dawn, hiking in different directions, planning to meet 15 miles out and compare notes. I went north, watching my GPS obsessively, marking my progress every mile, 10 miles, 12 miles, 15 miles. I'd made it farther than ever before. Then the trail curved, and I was looking at hot springs again, spread out in the valley below me. I sat down and cried, just sat on the trail and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Because I understood now. There was no leaving. Hot Springs wasn't stuck in time. Hot Springs was time, or the only time that existed anymore, and the rest of the world had moved on without it. Rebecca found me an hour later. She'd tried going south, had made it even farther, 20 miles by her GPS. Still ended up back here. "What do we do?" she asked. "We accept it," I said. "We find our loops. We stop fighting." That was 4 years ago, or maybe it was yesterday. Time is different here now. I have my routine. I wake up at 6:30. I eat breakfast at the hostel. Frank tells his Lover's Leap Bridge story, and I laugh like it's the first time I'm hearing it. I walk to the coffee shop and order a medium roast, black. I sit by the window and write in my journal, documenting the loop, even though I know I'll write the same things tomorrow. At 2:47, I walk to the gas station and watch the man in the blue jacket buy his energy drink. In the evening, I have dinner with Rebecca and the other loopers. The ones who know they're stuck but have made peace with it. There are about 20 of us now, people who stayed too long and couldn't leave. We recognize each other. We have our own small variations within the greater loop, tiny rebellions of choice in a day that otherwise plays the same every time. The town itself is eternal. Buildings don't age. Food never runs out because every day the delivery truck arrives at 11:03 and restocks everything. Nobody gets sick. Nobody dies. We just loop forever in this one preserved moment of April in Hot Springs, North Carolina. Sometimes I see new hikers come through and I want to warn them. Want to tell them to keep walking. Don't stay. Don't get comfortable. But I don't. Because if I warn them, I'll become Deacon, the crazy hiker who gets removed from the loop. And I'd rather be here, stuck but aware, than erased from existence entirely. The Appalachian Trail still runs through Hot Springs. You can find it on maps, can plan your resupply stop here. The hostel is real, the gas station is real, everything is real and functional and operating exactly as it should. But if you come here, count the days carefully. If you wake up and realize you've heard the same story twice, seen the same person do the same thing at the same time, check your calendar, check your memories. And if you feel time starting to slip, if yesterday and today start to blur together, leave immediately. Don't be like us. Don't stay for that 4th day, that 7th day, that moment when the loop decides you're part of the pattern now. Because once you're caught, once Hot Springs decides you belong here, you'll never finish your hike. You'll just walk in circles forever, watching the same man buy the same energy drink at 2:47 p.m., telling yourself that tomorrow will be different, knowing that tomorrow is just another word for today. The drawings were too good. I was alone at the Dismal Creek shelter in Virginia, settling in for the night, when I noticed them. Someone had drawn on the walls with charcoal. Elaborate figures, detailed faces, scenes from the forest rendered with the kind of skill you didn't expect to find in a backcountry shelter. Most shelter art was crude, stick figures and poorly spelled jokes. These were different. These were portraits, and they were all of children. 12 faces, maybe 13, arranged in a row along the back wall like a class photo. Different ages, ranging from maybe 6 to 15. Boys and girls with serious expressions, staring out from the wood like they were waiting for something. The detail was incredible. I could see individual eyelashes, the texture of their hair, the way light hit their faces. But their eyes were wrong. Every face had the same eyes, dark and hollow, like the artist had drawn sockets and forgotten to fill them in, or chosen not to. My name is Gabriel Reyes, 46, and I worked as a documentary filmmaker based in DC, specializing in outdoor adventure content. I was solo hiking a section of the AT in Virginia for a project about solitude and wilderness, doing daily video logs and interviews with other hikers. I'd stayed in dozens of shelters, seen plenty of strange art and weirder trail culture, but these drawings stopped me cold. I set up my sleeping bag and tried to ignore them, but I kept looking back at those hollow eyes. As the light faded, they seemed to get darker, deeper, like they were holes in the wall rather than drawings. I took some photos with my camera, thinking they'd make interesting B-roll for the documentary, and settled in for the night. Around midnight, I heard the footsteps. Small footsteps, like a child running on the wooden platform. Fast, light, accompanied by giggling. Then another set of footsteps and another, until it sounded like a dozen kids playing tag inside the shelter. I turned on my headlamp. The shelter was empty. Just me and my gear and those drawings on the wall. The footsteps stopped the moment my light came on. Silence, heavy and waiting. I kept the light on for 5 minutes, scanning every corner, checking behind me, looking for any rational explanation. Nothing. Just empty wood and darkness beyond the shelter's open front. I turned off the light. Within 30 seconds, the footsteps started again. This time I grabbed my camera, switched it to night mode, and started recording. The camera had infrared capability, could capture things invisible to the naked eye. I aimed it toward the sounds, watching the small screen as the camera translated darkness into grainy green and white footage. And I saw them. Children. A dozen children, maybe more, running around the shelter platform. They showed up on the infrared as heat signatures, bright white shapes moving with impossible speed. They were playing some kind of game, chasing each other, laughing soundlessly except for the faint giggles I could hear with my ears. They ran past me, around me, sometimes through me. I felt cold spots as they passed, brief touches like cold fingers brushing my sleeping bag. One of them stopped right in front of my camera, a girl maybe 8 years old, staring directly at the lens with those hollow eyes. She opened her mouth and I heard her clearly, even though the others had been nearly silent. "Are you lost?" "No," I managed to say. "I'm just hiking through." "Everyone's lost here," she said. "That's why we stayed." The other children stopped playing, turned to look at me. All those hollow eyes, all focused on me, waiting. "Stayed?" I asked. "When we got lost," the girl said. "When we couldn't find the way back. The woods kept us. Now we live here. Now we play here. It's not so bad once you accept it." "How long have you been here?" She tilted her head, considering. "I don't remember. A long time. Long enough that I forgot what town I came from. Long enough that I forgot my last name." She smiled, and even in the infrared I could see it was wrong. Too wide. Showing too many teeth. "But I remember how to play, and we need more players. We're always looking for more players." The other children moved closer, forming a circle around me. The temperature in the shelter dropped to the point where I could see my breath, could feel frost forming on my sleeping bag. "Do you want to play with us?" the girl asked. "I don't think so," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to sleep. I'm hiking out early." "You can't leave yet," another voice said. A boy this time, younger than the girl. "You just got here. It's not polite to leave so soon. Our parents taught us manners before we got lost." "Stay and play," the girl insisted. "Just one game, just until morning. If you win, we'll let you go. If you lose..." She trailed off, giggling again, and the others joined in. A chorus of children's laughter that was all wrong, too high and too sustained. "What game?" I asked, because some part of me understood that refusing directly might be worse than playing along. "Hide and seek," the girl said. "In the woods. We hide, you seek. If you find us all before dawn, you can leave. If you don't..." She gestured to the drawings on the wall. "We add your picture to our collection and you stay with us. Forever." I looked at those charcoal portraits with new horror, understanding now what they were. Not art, not imagination. They were records. They were the lost hikers who'd stayed in this shelter and made the mistake of playing games with things that looked like children but weren't. "I don't have charcoal," I said stupidly, desperately, looking for any out. The girl produced a piece from somewhere, held it out to me. It was fresh, black, perfect for drawing. "We always have charcoal," she said. "We have lots of time to make it. We'll teach you how if you stay." The children were all staring at me now, waiting for my answer. I could feel the weight of their attention, could sense something vast and hungry behind those hollow eyes. They looked like children. They sounded like children. But they were something else, something that had learned to wear the shape of lost kids the same way a hermit crab wears a shell. "Okay," I said. "One game, until dawn." The girl clapped her hands in delight. "Count to 100. We'll hide. Don't open your eyes until you finish counting." I closed my eyes and started counting. Around me, I heard the children scatter, heard their footsteps fade into the forest. I counted slowly, deliberately, using the time to think. I had maybe 4 hours until dawn. I had my headlamp, my camera, my GPS, and I had no intention of playing their game fairly. When I reached 100, I opened my eyes. The shelter was empty again, completely silent. Even the cold had faded. I grabbed my gear, packed faster than I'd ever packed in my life, and ran. I didn't follow the trail. I went directly east, bushwhacking through the dark forest, using my GPS to navigate toward the nearest road. Behind me, I could hear voices calling, "That's not how you play. You're supposed to seek. You're supposed to find us." The voices multiplied, coming from all directions now, angry and petulant. I heard crashing in the underbrush, movement tracking me through the trees. They were following, herding, trying to turn me back toward the shelter. I kept running. Branches tore at my face and pack. I tripped over roots, fell hard twice, kept getting up and pushing forward. The children's voices were getting closer, no longer playful. They were screaming now, furious that I'd broken the rules of their game. "You have to play. You promised. You have to play." I broke through the tree line onto a forest road just as my headlamp died. I stood there in darkness, gasping, listening to the sounds of pursuit behind me. The children were at the edge of the woods. I could hear them, but they weren't crossing onto the road. They stayed in the trees, just beyond the roadside, whispering and cursing and crying. "Cheater," the girl's voice said from the darkness. "You cheated. Now you can never come back. Never sleep here again. We'll be waiting. We'll always be waiting." I walked down that road for 3 miles in total darkness until I saw headlights. I flagged down a pickup truck, some local heading home from a late shift. He gave me a ride to the nearest town, asked me if I was okay. I told him I'd gotten spooked by a bear, decided to bail out in the middle of the night. He nodded like that made sense, like people did that all the time. I never went back to that section of trail. I finished other parts of the AT over the years, but I always skipped Virginia. I couldn't make myself go back to those woods, back to Dismal Creek, back to a shelter where lost children played games with consequences that lasted forever. The footage I recorded that night was corrupted. When I tried to review it the next day, the files were blank. Just static and the occasional flash of those hollow eyes staring into the camera. The photos I'd taken of the drawings were gone too, deleted from my memory card by something that didn't want evidence of its existence to leave those woods. But I still have the charcoal, the piece the girl gave me. I kept it as a reminder, even though I know I shouldn't have. It never gets smaller no matter how much you use it, never degrades. I've tried to throw it away a dozen times, but it always comes back, appearing in my jacket pocket or camera bag or somewhere I didn't put it. It's sitting on my desk right now, black and perfect, waiting. Last week, I got a message through my documentary channel's contact form. No name, no email address, just a message. We're still playing. We're still waiting. We added a new player to our collection last month. A man from Ohio who thought he could win. He was wrong. He's on the wall now, between the boy with the red hair and the girl with the missing tooth. His eyes are perfect. We're getting so good at drawing eyes now. We've had lots of practice. You still owe us a game. You promised. Everyone knows you can't break a promise to children. It's not polite, and we remember everyone who breaks their promises. We remember their faces, their voices, their names. We'll see you soon, Gabriel. I don't hike the AT anymore. I don't go into the back country at all if I can help it. And when I do have to travel through Virginia for work, I make sure I'm never alone, never in the woods after dark, never anywhere near shelters where children's laughter might echo in the night. The woods keep what they catch. The lost stay lost. And somewhere in a shelter on Dismal Creek, there's a space on the wall waiting for one more portrait, one more face with hollow eyes that stare forever into nothing. If you hike that section, if you stay at that shelter, don't look at the drawings too carefully. Don't admire the artistry. Don't wonder about the children's faces. And if you hear laughter after dark, if you hear footsteps, if you hear young voices asking if you want to play, pack your gear and leave immediately. Don't count to 100. Don't close your eyes. Don't make promises you can't keep. Because they're still there, still waiting, still looking for players who'll stay when the game is over. And they're very, very good at convincing people to stay. She was moving too fast. I first saw her from the summit of Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire, watching through binoculars as hikers made their way up the exposed trail below. Most were moving at the normal pace for that terrain, slow, careful, watching their footing on the rocks. But one hiker was practically running up the mountain, moving at a speed that shouldn't be possible with a full pack, especially not on that technical terrain. I lowered the binoculars and checked my watch. Based on her speed, she'd reached the summit in about 8 minutes. The hike typically took 45 minutes from where she was. She made it in 7. My name is Elliot Dawson, 32, and I was working as a field researcher for the AMC, the Appalachian Mountain Club, studying hiker behavior and trail impact in the White Mountains. I'd been stationed at the summit hut on Moosilauke for the week, observing traffic patterns, talking to hikers, collecting data. I'd seen hundreds of people climb this mountain in various conditions. I'd never seen anyone move like she did. She crested the summit at a dead run, barely breathing hard, and immediately kept going down the other side without pausing. I tried to call out to her, to ask if she was okay, but she was gone before I could finish the sentence. Just a blur of motion heading north, moving like something was chasing her. Except when I looked back the way she'd come, there was nothing. No other hikers, no animals, no obvious threat. I radioed the caretaker at the next hut north, asked if they could keep an eye out for a solo female hiker moving unusually fast, possibly in distress. He said he'd watch for her. She reached his hut, 12 miles away over extremely difficult terrain, in 3 hours. That shouldn't be possible. Even elite trail runners took 5 or 6 hours to cover that distance in the whites. Loaded hikers took 12 to 14. But she'd done it in 3, and according to the caretaker, she'd barely slowed down when she passed through, just grabbed some water from the outlet stream and kept moving. Didn't say a word, he told me over the radio. Didn't make eye contact. Just moved like she had somewhere to be and was already late. Over the next 2 days, I tracked her progress through the radio network. She was doing 40 to 50 miles a day in the White Mountains, which was utterly impossible given the terrain. The Whites were brutal, all steep climbs and technical descents, notorious for destroying hikers' knees and breaking their spirits. Even strong hikers averaged 15 miles a day through this section. but she was moving like the mountains were flat, like gravity had forgotten to apply to her. On the third day, I decided to try to intercept her. Based on her pace and the reports coming in from other shelters and huts, I calculated she'd pass through the Zealand Falls area around mid-afternoon. I hiked in early, positioned myself on the trail, and waited. She came around the bend at 2:17 p.m., exactly when my calculations predicted. She was maybe 5'6", late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her pack was a standard thru-hiker loadout, nothing special. Her clothes were soaked with sweat but not torn or damaged. She looked tired but not exhausted. Not the way someone should look after maintaining an impossible pace for days. "Hey," I called out, stepping into her path. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" She stopped, finally stopped, and looked at me with eyes that were too wide, too focused, like she was seeing something beyond me, through me. "I need to keep moving," she said. Her voice was flat, affectless, like someone reading from a script. "You've been hiking at an incredible pace," I said. "I'm a researcher with the AMC, and I'm concerned about your safety. Can you tell me why you're moving so fast?" "I have to," she said. "I have to finish before it catches me." "Before what catches you?" She looked back down the trail, and I saw fear flash across her face. Real, genuine terror. "The storm," she said. "The lightning. It's been following me since Katahdin. Since the summit. Since I finished." "You finished your through hike?" 13 days ago. I summited Katahdin on a clear day, perfect weather. But when I started coming down, there was lightning. Just one bolt right behind me. So close I felt the heat. It hit the summit marker exactly where I'd been standing 30 seconds before. She was talking faster now, the words tumbling out. I thought it was coincidence. Bad timing, but then it happened again and again. Every time I stopped, every time I slowed down, there was lightning, following me, hunting me. I looked at the sky. It was completely clear, not a cloud anywhere. "There's no storm," I said gently. "Maybe you should take a break. Let me call." Lightning struck the trail behind her. Just one bolt, coming from a clear sky, hitting the exact spot she'd been standing 30 seconds ago. The crack of thunder was instantaneous, deafening. The smell of ozone filled the air. I stumbled backward, my ears ringing. "See?" she said, and now there was something like relief in her voice. Relief that someone else had witnessed it, that she wasn't crazy. "It's always exactly where I was. Never where I am. As long as I keep moving, as long as I stay ahead of it, it can't hit me." "How long have you been running?" I asked. 13 days. I haven't stopped. I can't stop. Every time I slow down, every time I rest for more than a few minutes, the lightning finds me. I've been moving south since Maine, retracing the trail, trying to... She trailed off, looking lost. "I don't know what I'm trying to do. Outrun it, outlast it. I just know I can't stop." Another bolt hit behind her, closer this time. I could feel the electricity in the air, raising the hair on my arms. "You need to get off the exposed ridges," I said. "Get into the trees. Lightning can't track you as easily." "It doesn't matter," she interrupted. "It finds me everywhere. Trees, valleys, shelters. The only thing that works is moving. Constantly moving." She looked at me with exhausted, desperate eyes. "Have you ever heard of anything like this? In all your research? Anyone else who finished the trail and got marked, cursed? Whatever this is." I thought about the stories I'd collected over the years, the weird tales hikers told around shelters, the folklore that accumulated around a trail as old as the AT. There were legends about the trail itself being alive, about it not wanting to let hikers go once they'd walked its length. Stories about people who finished and felt compelled to start over immediately, or who went home and found they couldn't adjust to normal life, felt pulled back to the mountains like the trail had claimed something essential from them. But I'd never heard of anything like this, never heard of the trail or the mountains or whatever forces lived in them actively hunting someone. "Listen to me," I said. "There's a research station 3 miles south. Weather equipment, lightning detection, the works. If we can get you there, maybe we can figure out what's happening, find a pattern." Lightning struck between us. I went flying backward, hitting the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of me. When I looked up, she was already running again, heading north this time, moving with that impossible speed. I tried to follow, but my legs wouldn't work right, my whole body buzzing from the near miss. By the time I could stand, she was gone. I reported everything to my supervisors, who were skeptical to say the least. But I had witnesses. The other hut caretakers who'd seen her, the handful of hikers who'd been passed by her in the last few days. And I had the scorch marks on the trail where lightning had struck from a clear sky, documented with photos and GPS coordinates. The AMC put out an alert through the trail networks, asking hikers to report any sightings. Reports came in sporadically over the next week. She was seen in Vermont, moving south now, still maintaining that impossible pace. Then New York, then New Jersey. But the reports got stranger. People said she looked thinner, more worn down, like the constant motion was grinding her away. Her clothes were falling apart. Her pack was nearly empty, as if she'd shed everything that wasn't absolutely necessary for movement. And the lightning was getting closer. Multiple hikers reported seeing strikes that seemed to chase her, that came faster than the last. Someone got video on their phone. Shaky footage showing a figure running down a trail in Pennsylvania, and behind her a series of lightning bolts hitting the ground in quick succession, each one closer than the last, like something learning to predict her movements. The last confirmed sighting was in Maryland, near the Dahlgren Backpack Campground. A section hiker reported seeing her around dawn, moving at a stagger now instead of a run, barely staying ahead of lightning that was striking every few seconds, walking up the trail behind her like footsteps made of electricity and thunder. "She looked right at me," the hiker's report said, "and she mouthed the word sorry. Then the lightning hit so close it blinded me, and when I could see again, she was gone. No one's seen her since. But hikers in Maryland and southern Pennsylvania report strange weather on that section of trail. Isolated lightning storms that appear without warning, that seem to follow the trail itself, that strike in regular patterns, moving north to south and back again, like something still searching. The scorch marks are there if you know where to look. Dozens of them, hundreds maybe, making a pattern along the trail. They're fresh, smoking, like the lightning just struck moments ago, even though the sky is clear. And sometimes, late-night hikers report seeing someone running through the darkness ahead of them, moving too fast to be human, staying just ahead of light that flashes behind them with mechanical regularity. I don't think she stopped. I don't think she could stop. I think she's still out there, still running, still trying to outpace something that will never tire, never slow, never stop hunting her. The trail took something from her when she finished it. Maybe it takes something from everyone who completes it, just usually something smaller, something we can live without. But for her, for whatever reason, it wanted more. It wanted her life, her time, her body. It wanted her to keep walking forever. And when she tried to leave, when she finished and thought she was done, the trail found a way to bring her back. I still work in the whites, still collect my data and write my reports. But I pay attention to the weather now in ways I never did before. And when I see lightning from a clear sky, when I hear thunder that sounds like footsteps, I remember the look in her eyes. That mixture of exhaustion and determination and absolute terror. The look of someone who knows they can never stop, because stopping means dying, but running forever means losing everything that makes you human. If you're planning to through hike, if you're chasing that dream of walking from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia, understand that some journeys change you in ways you can't predict. Some trails don't let you go when you reach the end. Some mountains claim part of you in exchange for letting you cross them. And if you finish, if you summit Katahdin or touch the plaque at Springer. Pay attention to the weather as you descend. If you see lightning where there shouldn't be lightning, if you hear thunder from a clear sky, start moving and don't stop, because the trail might have decided it's not done with you yet, and it has all the time in the world to catch up. The register entries were written in reverse, not just the words, the entire structure. They started at the bottom of the page and worked upward. The letters were reversed like mirror writing, and the dates ran backward, starting with tomorrow and working into yesterday. I was at the ice water spring shelter in the Smokies, and I'd just opened the register to sign in, the way you do. But the most recent entry, dated April 27th, which was tomorrow, not today, was at the bottom of the page in handwriting that looked like someone had written it while looking in a mirror. I could make out some of the words if I tilted my head and tried to read backwards. Eric Nitemos Gnor, W, which reversed, spelled wrong something here. My name is Natasha Keene, 39, and I worked as a cognitive psychologist in Nashville, studying perception and pattern recognition. I was section hiking the Smokies during my spring break, partly for exercise and partly because I found wilderness hiking helped me think through research problems. I approached the world looking for patterns, for the logic underlying chaos. But this register made no sense. I flipped through the pages. Every entry for the past month was reversed. Mirror writing, backwards dates, bottom to top progression. Some entries were single lines, others were paragraphs. All of them were wrong in the same consistent way, like someone had taken a normal register and reflected it through some dimensional barrier. I tried to read more entries, holding them up to the light from the shelter opening, using my phone camera to flip the image and read the reversed text properly. What I could make out was disturbing. The shelter is facing the wrong direction. I can see the trail leading away, but when I walk toward it, I end up back inside. Time feels backwards here. I woke up tired and went to bed energized. My watch is running counterclockwise. I think I've been here for 3 days, but the calendar says I arrive tomorrow. How do you leave a place you haven't entered yet? The other hikers keep walking in backwards. They set up their sleeping bags, then unpack their packs, then take off their boots, then walk into the shelter rear first. When I try to talk to them, their words come out backwards and I can't understand them. The final entry I could decipher, dated May 2nd, 5 days in the future, said, "I understand now. The shelter exists in reverse causality. Effect precedes cause here. You don't arrive and then leave. You leave first and then you will have arrived. The only way out is to go backwards through time until you reach the moment before you entered. But I can't remember when that was. I've been here too long. The future is my past now and I'm stuck in between." I looked up from the register, feeling deeply unsettled. The shelter seemed normal. Standard 3-walled design, wooden platform, bare cables, the usual carved graffiti. But now that I was paying attention, I noticed small wrong details. The dirt path leading to the shelter showed footprints walking away from it, but not toward it. The ashes in the fire ring looked fresh, but were cold to the touch, like a fire that would be lit tomorrow but had already burned yesterday. The carved names on the walls included dates from next week. I decided not to stay. I'd planned to spend the night, but this felt wrong enough that I wanted to put distance between myself and this place. I stepped off the shelter platform and started walking toward the trail, heading north the way I'd been going. But with each step forward, the shelter got closer. I stopped, confused. I'd been walking away from it, I was certain, but now it was in front of me, 10 feet away instead of 20. I turned around to get my bearings, to figure out which direction was which. The trail I'd arrived on was gone. There was just forest, thick and pathless. The only trail leading away from the shelter was in the direction I'd been walking, the direction that had brought me closer to the shelter instead of away from it. I tried again, more carefully this time, watching my feet, making sure I was definitely walking in the direction that should take me north. Same result. The shelter got closer. The trail I needed disappeared. Okay, I said out loud, trying to think through it logically. If this place operates on reversed causality, then cause and effect are flipped, which means to leave, I need to. I paused, working it through. I need to approach it? To walk toward it in order to move away. I turned around and walked directly toward the shelter. With each step, it got farther away. The trail behind me, the direction I was moving away from, became clearer, more defined. I kept walking toward the shelter while simultaneously moving away from it, my brain struggling to process the contradiction between what I was doing and what was happening. After 50 yards of walking toward the shelter, it was barely visible behind me. The trail ahead was clear and normal, leading north into the mountains exactly like it should. I'd escaped by approaching what I was trying to leave, but I made the mistake of looking back. The shelter was gone. Not just distant, completely absent. There was no clearing, no structure, no sign there had ever been anything there. Just unbroken forest stretching back the way I'd come. But I could still hear sounds from where it should have been. Voices talking in a rhythm that was almost normal except slightly off. When I focused on the words, I realized they were speaking backwards. Normal sentences played in reverse, phonemes flipped, and one of the voices was mine. I heard myself saying, Iliftsuk et morf nruter ot gnitig mai wotuoba, eripma claw ot ot, which, reversed, was to walk to Hampshire about how I'm getting to return from the quest file. Except I hadn't said that. I wouldn't say that. The sentence didn't even make complete sense. Unless I hadn't said it yet. Unless that was me, tomorrow or next week or some point in my future, speaking words I would eventually say, but hadn't yet. The shelter existing in reverse causality would hear my future words before I spoke them, would record my future visits before I made them. I started hiking north as fast as I could, suddenly desperate to put miles between myself and that place. But the wrongness followed me. I started noticing small temporal inconsistencies. My watch would jump forward a few minutes, then back, then forward again. I'd see hikers in the distance ahead of me, but when I reached the spot where they'd been, there were only footprints leading toward where I'd come from, not away. At one point, I found a granola bar wrapper on the trail. It was mine. Same brand I had in my pack, same way I always folded the wrapper, but I hadn't eaten one. I checked my food bag. I was missing one bar, but I had no memory of eating it. The wrapper looked fresh, recently dropped. I picked it up and put it in my trash bag. 5 minutes later, I got hungry and reached into my pack for a granola bar. As I was eating it, I had the strangest feeling of déjà vu, like I'd already done this. When I finished, I folded the wrapper the way I always did, and realized it was the exact same fold I'd found on the trail. Same creases, same shape. I'd found my own trash before I'd created it. The temporal distortions continued for hours as I hiked. I'd see landmarks before I reached them, then pass them, then see them again behind me. The sun seemed to move irregularly, jumping forward in the sky and then sliding backwards. Other hikers I passed said hello after I'd already passed them, their greetings coming from behind me like they were speaking to my past self who hadn't arrived yet. By evening, I was exhausted and disoriented, no longer sure if I was moving forward through time or backward, if I was hiking north toward Maine or south toward Georgia. I set up camp far from any shelter, but I kept my tent aligned carefully north-south, kept my watch where I could see it, kept talking out loud to anchor myself in linear time. It's 7:32 p.m., I said. I'm making dinner. After I eat, I'll go to sleep. When I wake up, it will be tomorrow. Time moves forward. Cause precedes effect. I'm not backwards. But in the morning, my pot was already clean before I washed it. My tent was already packed before I took it down. And on a tree next to my campsite, someone had carved a message in bark that was still bleeding sap. Natasha was here, May 1. Today was April 26th. I wouldn't reach this campsite on May 1st. I'd already been here and left, but I was also here now, reading a message from myself that I'd written in the future. I hiked out of the Smokies that day, breaking every rule about daily mileage and safety. I just walked, fast and panicked, until I crossed out of the national park boundaries and the temporal distortions finally stopped. Suddenly my watch ran normally. The sun moved predictably. People's words came before their lips moved instead of after. I was back in linear time. I'd escaped. But part of me is still there. I know that because sometimes I remember things that haven't happened yet. I'll get memories of conversations I haven't had, of places I haven't been, of decisions I haven't made. They're always connected to hiking, to trails, to the mountains. Like some part of me is still walking backwards through the Smokies, still trapped in that loop of reverse causality, experiencing my future while I'm living my present. 2 months after that hike, I got an email from someone I didn't know, a hiker named Marco who was planning to section hike the Smokies. He said he'd read my trip report on a hiking forum, except I hadn't written one. I checked the forum. There it was, posted under my username, dated 3 weeks in the future from when I was reading it. The trip report described a hike I hadn't taken yet. Through a section I was planning to hike next month. It included details I hadn't decided on yet, described shelters I would stay at, mentioned people I would meet. It was written by future me, and past Marco had found it before I'd written it. I deleted my forum account, but I know the trip report still exists somewhere, somewhen, because time isn't as linear as I used to think. The Icewater Spring Shelter proved that. Some places exist in reverse, where endings come before beginnings and effects create their own causes. The shelter is still there. I checked the maps, the trail guides. It's listed as a standard overnight stop. No warnings, no alerts. People stay there all the time. But I wonder how many of them notice the reversed register, the backwards footprints, the way time feels slippery and wrong. I wonder how many of them escape, and how many are still there, trapped in a loop where they leave before they arrive, and arrive after they leave. If you're hiking the Smokies, if you plan to stay at Icewater Spring Shelter, check the register carefully. If the writing looks reversed, if the dates run backwards, if the entries describe a future you haven't lived yet, don't stay. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to understand the pattern. Just walk toward the shelter until you're far away from it. Approach it until it disappears behind you. And whatever you do, don't look back. Because if you see yourself there, if you hear your own voice speaking in reverse, you'll know that part of you never left. Part of you is still there, walking backwards through time, trying to find the exit that comes before the entrance. And you'll spend the rest of your life remembering a future where you never escaped at all. The white blaze was red. I'd been hiking the AT for 6 months, northbound from Springer to Katahdin, and I knew the trail markers intimately. White blazes, always white, 2 inches wide and 6 inches tall, painted on trees and rocks to show the way. Blue blazes for side trails, yellow for approaching roads, but always white for the main trail. Except this one was red. Dark red, almost maroon, painted on a birch tree about 100 yards past the Speck Pond shelter in Maine. I was in the final stretch, less than 200 miles from Katahdin, from finishing, and suddenly the trail was marked with a color that shouldn't exist. My name is Jesse Thornton, 24, and I'd quit my job at a tech startup in Austin to through hike. I was one of those people who needed to do something drastic to figure out their life. And walking from Georgia to Maine seemed less destructive than the alternatives I'd been considering. The trail had been hard, had broken me down and built me back up, had taught me things about myself I'd needed to learn. I was ready to finish. I was ready to summit Katahdin, to touch the sign, to join the ranks of people who'd walked all 2,090 miles. I had less than 2 weeks left at my current pace. But now there was this red blaze, and it was pointing off the trail into the forest where no trail existed. I stood there for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Logic said ignore it, stick to the white blazes, follow the established trail. But something about the red blaze called to me. It looked fresh, deliberately painted, not some accident or mistake. And there was a feeling in the air around it, a sense of significance, like this was important even if I couldn't explain why. I followed the red blaze into the forest. There was no trail at first, just woods and undergrowth. But after 50 yards, I found another red blaze, then another. They led me deeper into the main wilderness, away from the AT, away from any established path. I marked my route carefully, breaking branches and piling stones, making sure I could find my way back. After a mile of following red blazes, I found a trail, a real trail, worn and maintained, cutting through the forest parallel to the AT. It was older than the AT, I could tell. The tread was deeper, more established, like people had been walking this path for generations before someone decided to paint white blazes on a different route. This trail was marked with red blazes every few hundred feet. And unlike the white blazes I'd been following for 6 months, these were carved into the trees rather than painted. Deep cuts in the bark, permanent, ancient. I followed the red blaze trail for hours. It climbed mountains the AT had gone around, descended into valleys the AT had bridged, took a path that was harder and longer and more remote than the established trail. But it felt right somehow. Felt like this was the route I was supposed to be taking, even though it made no logical sense. As the sun started to set, I found a shelter. Not an AT shelter. Something older, built from stone rather than wood, with a roof made from bark and branches that had somehow remained intact despite obvious age. Inside there was a register. I opened it, expecting more backwards writing or temporal anomalies or whatever fresh strangeness the trail was going to throw at me. But the entries were normal, straightforward. Written by hikers with trail names and dates, talking about their journeys. Except the dates were wrong. The most recent entry was from 1954. Before that, 1931. Then 1908. Then dates that went back to the 1800s, written in increasingly archaic handwriting, with language that changed with the decades. I read through the register with growing fascination. These were hikers who'd walked a trail that existed before the AT, who'd followed the red blazes through these mountains for over a century. They wrote about the same things modern hikers did: the weather, the difficulty of the terrain, the joy of reaching summits, the exhaustion of long days. But they also wrote about something else. They wrote about the final blaze. Entry after entry mentioned it. Getting close to the final blaze now. Can feel it pulling me forward. And 3 more days until the final blaze. Everything I've walked for is almost here. And reached the final blaze today. I understand now. I understand everything. There's no going back, but I don't want to go back. This is where I was always supposed to be. None of the entries described what the final blaze was. They all assumed the reader already knew, already understood, and they all stopped after reaching it. No hiker who wrote about arriving at the final blaze ever wrote another entry afterward. I should have turned back, should have returned to the AT, to the known trail, to the finish at Katahdin I'd been walking toward for 6 months. But I kept going. The red blazes continued north, and I followed them, compelled by something I couldn't name. Over the next 4 days, I saw no other hikers. The red blaze trail was completely empty, showed no signs of recent use besides my own footprints. But it was maintained somehow. Fallen trees had been cleared, the tread was obvious, water sources were marked with small cairns. Someone was taking care of this trail even if I never saw them. The terrain got harder, steeper climbs, more exposed ridges, sections that required actual scrambling with my hands. This was trail hiking pushed to its limit, almost technical climbing in places. My body was exhausted, but I couldn't stop. The red blazes pulled me forward with a gravity I couldn't resist. On the 5th day, I reached a summit I didn't recognize. It wasn't on my maps, wasn't named in any guide. Just a bare, rocky peak with a view that stretched for 100 miles in every direction. And at the highest point, carved into a massive boulder, was a blaze. Not red, not white. This blaze was every color and no color, seeming to shift and change as I looked at it. It was painted, but also carved, but also neither. It existed on the surface of the rock and deep within it simultaneously. Looking at it hurt my eyes, but also felt like coming home, like seeing something I'd been searching for my entire life without knowing I was searching. The final blaze. I reached out and touched it. The stone was warm, vibrating with a frequency I could feel in my bones. And the moment my hand made contact, I understood. The Appalachian Trail wasn't the original trail. It was a compromise, a safe version. A route chosen because it avoided the places that were too powerful, too strange, too likely to keep hikers who walked them. The Red Blaze Trail was older, was the path people had walked before someone decided to make a trail that you could finish, that would let you go home when you were done. The final blaze was the ending of that original trail. But it wasn't an ending that let you leave. It was an ending that kept you, that took what you'd learned and who you'd become and absorbed it into the mountains themselves. Every hiker who'd reached this place had become part of it, their experiences and memories and journeys woven into the stone and trees and trails. They weren't dead. They were here, all of them, still hiking in some way I couldn't fully comprehend. Still walking, still climbing, still moving through these mountains forever. I could feel them around me, hundreds of hikers, maybe thousands, all the people who'd followed the red blazes to this summit over the centuries. I could sense their joy and pain and exhaustion and triumph, all of it flowing through the final blaze like current through a wire. And I understood that I had a choice. I could turn back, return to the AT, finish at Katahdin, go home and try to re-enter the life I'd left. Or I could stay, could let the final blaze take me, could become part of this eternal hike that never ended because ending wasn't the point. I don't know how long I stood there, my hand on the blaze, feeling the pull of it. Hours maybe days. Time felt flexible on that summit, like it didn't apply the same way it did in the normal world. Eventually, I pulled my hand away. I stepped back from the final blaze, breaking the contact. The presence of the other hikers faded, became distant. I was alone on the summit again, just me and the wind and the endless view. I turned around and walked back the way I'd come, following my own footprints, retracing the Red Blaze Trail. It took me 3 days to return to where I'd left the AT. The red blaze that had led me into the forest was gone now, just normal bark on the birch tree, no mark at all. I finished my through hike 2 weeks later. I summited Katahdin on a clear September day, touched the sign, took the photos, accepted the congratulations from the other hikers who were finishing. I'd walked from Georgia to Maine. I'd completed the Appalachian Trail, but I hadn't finished the real trail. I hadn't reached the ending that mattered. I'd turned away from the final blaze, chosen to return to normal life, to stay human rather than becoming something more. Most days, I think I made the right choice. I have a job again, have an apartment, have friends and relationships and a life that looks normal from the outside. But part of me is still on that summit, still standing with my hand on the final blaze, still feeling the pull of all those hikers who chose to stay. And I know that someday I'll go back. Maybe in a year, maybe in 10. Maybe when I'm old and tired and ready to make a different choice. I'll find the red blaze again. We'll follow the old trail through the mountains. will climb to that unmarked summit and put my hand on the stone that shifts between all colors and none. And this time, I won't pull away. This time, I'll let it take me. I'll become part of the eternal hike. We'll join all the others who understood that finishing isn't the point, that the walking itself is what matters, that the greatest journey is the one that never ends. The AT is beautiful. It's an achievement. It's something I'm proud to have completed. But it's not the whole story. Somewhere in these mountains, hidden from the guidebooks and maps, there's a trail that's older and truer and more demanding than anything most hikers will ever experience. The Red Blaze Trail, the path to the final blaze. If you find it, if you see a red mark leading off into the forest, you'll have to choose. You can ignore it, can stick to the established trail, can finish at Katahdin and go home with a story about walking from Georgia to Maine. Or you can follow the red blazes, can seek the older path, can walk toward an ending that isn't an ending at all. I can't tell you which choice is right. I can only tell you that both trails exist, both journeys are real, and the one you choose will define not just your hike, but everything that comes after. Choose carefully, or don't choose at all. Let the trail choose for you, the way it always does in the end.